Hello there and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer and on today's show I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Mags Haney and Alan Christie of the Terrace get together? Yes, one of us is the drug-dealing matriarch of the so-called family from hell of the Ratblock estate in Stirling. One of us is a convicted paedophile who's been moved into the local area. Sparks will fly, emotions will run high. A crowd of around 400 people will show up to demand that one of us is removed from the estate. And hopefully along the way, we'll get the chance to talk about some lower league Scottish football. How does that sound?
That's his class. Am I right in saying that Mags Haney essentially drew attention to herself because she drew attention to the paedophile? Is that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. Yes, she is the subject of a BBC Sounds podcast, which I haven't had the chance to listen to yet, but it sounds absolutely brilliant. So it's supposed to be a really, really good listen. I think that when you see a lot of these like 5 or 6 part BBC Scotland podcasts, they generally, I think there's like a seal of approval. You know they're going to be good. And it goes into Mags Haney's vigilantism and subsequent downfall at the hands of the Ratblock estate.
It's quite funny that she, I don't know, sold drugs for ages, which sounds quite bad. But the start of her downfall was her attempting to do some good, I suppose.
She went on Kilroy.
I did not know that. I would need to source that out because Kilroy was an incredible man with an incredible show. I enjoyed his. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't a chat show. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, it was. It was a talk show. Basically, it was kind of like a proto Jeremy Kyle.
Yes,
proto Trisha,
but wasn't as good as Shaft.
Oh yes, of course. This was the show where it was basically Sharer Shaft, where you had the chance during a sort of a tea time to shaft an opponent. It's basically the same as Golden Balls, wasn't it? It was effectively the same thing as that.
Exactly the same, but I think inexplicably, even though like Golden Balls was allowed to have maybe 1 or 2 series, I think Shaft was cancelled after. I think it was actually cancelled before the end of the first series, possibly because he used to say, will you share or will you shaft? And then he done a kind of downward motion with his fist. I don't know how to describe it. It was very uncomfortable. Maybe that's why it was ultimately dispensed with. 2
reasons. It was called Shafted. So 1, and 2, it was presented by Robert Kilroy Silk. What were they thinking? Honestly, of all the great TV shows that never get to see the light of day, we did see Robert Kilroy Silk present Shafted.
And then he tried to become an MP.
He did. He ran for a party called Veritas, I believe, who I think they were very similar to UKIP, and I don't know if they got subsumed in that whole sort of like right wing, right centre movement. But crazy times. You can get it on YouTube, and it's well worth checking out. And I think we may have discussed it in this podcast in the past. It's a compilation of all the intros to Robert Kilroy Silk's programme. Have you seen it? You have seen it.
Yes, I've not seen it for a long time, but I will. I'll now have to go back and review it again. It's incredible.
It's because every intro is delivered the same. It's the same cadence. And you want to go on holiday, but you're pregnant with 6 children. Like, it was all done in that sort of way. So yeah, definitely, listener, if you want to know more about Robert Kilroy Silk and want to know more about Kilroy in general, check it out on YouTube because it's worth watching. It's extraordinary. I'm going to say it's extraordinary that such an uncharismatic man became a television host, but then there'll be people who watch A View from the Terrace and maybe think the exact same thing about you and I. So who knows?
I'd forgotten about that compilation. It's incredible. I would recommend.
Do you think anyone's ever tuned into A View from the Terrace and thought, I wish Kilroy was hosting this? He'd be a lot better at it than these goons.
No, but they will now.
They will now. Anyway, Shaughan and I are back once again with our patented 3-game podcast. We will be discussing 1 game from the Championship, another match from League 1, and a third and final fixture from League 2. We'll also look at some of the big talking points from across the nation while we're at it. Will we have a laugh along the way? Probably not, but that hasn't stopped us before. And before we get started, Shaughan, everything okay with you?
Yeah, very well. What about you?
Yeah, fine, in a good place, both physically and mentally. So not much to update anyone with on that. Haven't played badminton, haven't been humiliated by an associate, so that's always good. And before we properly get going, some corrections and clarifications. On last week's show, we talked very briefly about Nicolas Cage and his body of work. And I had a look in the Discord, the Terrace Discord, and while I think a lot of the posts in it are vile, like really some really nasty stuff being shared amongst some of the members, they did take some time out of the grot to share some other Nicolas Cage movies. Raising Arizona, the Coen Brothers movie.
Yes, I've seen that. That's okay.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Wild at Heart, David Lynch movie.
Is okay, yes.
The good bit when Willem Dafoe shoots himself in the head with his own shotgun. Willem Dafoe's very good in that as Bobby Peru. He's a very, very scary villain.
I did just to reiterate. I know that Nicolas Cage has been in some good films. I'm not sure he's often good in them. However,
Dream Scenario.
I've not seen that.
Adaptation.
I've not seen that.
And one which was mentioned last week was The Surfer. That got quite a positive write-up.
So I have now been messaged independently by two separate people to tell me that
Really?
to ignore the reviews for The Surfer. It's actually very good, so I will get to that as soon as possible.
Next, I'll get on to that as well, and then we can spend the start of next week's podcast talking about The Surfer. And on top of that as well, yes, Bob Mortimer did represent Jarvis Cocker after his arrest at the 1996 Brit Awards. I went back and watched Michael Jackson's performance from that evening. Vulgar, very, very vulgar. Really fancies himself as a Christ-like figure. On stage with somebody pretending to be a rabbi and some children. No, they were actual children. They weren't people pretending to be children.
They were real children.
They were real children.
Just kids.
Just kids. It's just an incredible. He's on a crane, I presume, just getting swung around with the light, and I'm just going, what about this? What about that? Our song's terrible, and that performance is really, really bad. And Jarvis Cocker was 100% right to go up there and to draw attention to how ridiculous it was.
Yes, but I believe the correction was it didn't go to court, and Bob Mortimer just was his legal representative in the police station afterwards.
Yes. Aye, that's right, of course, yes. Just for that one evening, when it did go a bit further, he had proper representation, but fair play to Bob Mortimer for stepping in for that evening. On top of that as well, after watching the Michael Jackson's performance, I wouldn't say it went down a rabbit hole. I poked my head in and had a look around before coming back out again. But I did look at, there's a YouTube video that is compiled news reports from television from that time, and there's a great clip of Matthew Wright, who you might know from the Wright Stuff.
Oh, yes, terrible.
Yeah, he's terrible. But he was an editor at the Daily Mail at that point, and he mentioned he's been interviewed to talk about 4,000 Daily Mirror readers who purchased t-shirts with Justice for Jarvis emblazoned across the front. If you at home have a Justice for Jarvis t-shirt from 1996, please do send it, although I can't imagine there's anyone listening to this show who has a Justice for Jarvis t-shirt.
Was that roughly the same time that there was t-shirts about Free Deirdre when she went to jail in Coronation Street? Roughly the same time?
I don't know. I think Deirdre Rashid might have been slightly later than that. I need to get my timelines corrected. But I'm sure, did Tony Blair not speak about that in the House of Commons? I think he might have done.
There was a guy at my work when I worked in Tesco's. There was a night shift manager that used to come to his work in a Free Deirdre Rashid t-shirt.
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. I'm online just now. Tony Blair wanted to be briefed out about Deirdre. It's an article celebrating an anniversary of Coronation Street. Free the Weatherfield one, 1998 it was, the campaign to get Free Deirdre Rashid. The campaign to free Deirdre Rashid is gathering momentum, to which the Home Secretary Jack Straw under orders to look at the case.
It's just a soap.
It's just a soap. It's a 1998. That was, we're approaching sort of new metal era. Britpop had died. Oasis were on their arse after Be Here Now. The Verve had released Urban Hymns. Radiohead had released OK Computer. Travis were quite big. Bit of a dead zone in terms of music, sort of 1998, 1999. Limp Bizkit might have been fairly popular. We were a couple of years away from the Strokes coming in.
I suppose it's essentially when life started to ultimately go downhill.
Aye, yeah, the 1998 World Cup. I wonder if there's probably a long read to be written about the decline and fall of Ronaldo in the final of the 1998 World Cup and the failure to have Deirdre Rashid released from prison. Need to workshop that idea, but there might be something in there. There might be something in there, Shaughan, that we can explore. That's perhaps a bonus podcast that we can focus on. But we have spent far too much time talking about Jarvis Cocker, Bob Mortimer, Nicolas Cage, Mags Haney, Britpop. We're going to get this podcast kicked off properly by discussing the biggest game in the championship. It was a do or do not encounter at Gayfield between Arbroath and Airdrieonians, and the Smokies emerged as winners courtesy of Nikolai Todorov's well-taken goal midway through the second half. Arbroath have made a very promising start to this season. They've taken 7 points from 4 matches. They are currently in third place. The Diamonds, meanwhile, prop up the division. They've just got 2 points and not the start that Danny Lennon would have been hoping for. Shaughan McGuigan, thoughts on Arbroath 1, Airdrieonians 0?
I don't think it was a classic. I will say that kind of first and foremost. But in terms of from an Arbroath perspective, the fact that they've started with 7 points from 4 games, they're sitting, I think, third in the table. There must be some Arbroath fans that are maybe starting to think that they could aim a wee bit higher than just staying in a division. And while that might seem maybe they shouldn't be quite ahead of themselves, I suppose. I can understand why, because they've played well in every single game this season. Even the game that they lost to St Johnstone, I thought they played quite well. And they thoroughly deserve to win this one. And I think that's what's so encouraging about them this season. In terms of we've spoken about them twice now on the main pod, and it was against when they played Queen's Park. Won that one quite comfortably at Lesser Hampden, and on Saturday against Airdrie. It wasn't necessarily comfortable, but it certainly was a merited win. And the fact that they have now went up against the two teams that you would expect them to be coming up against in the bottom 3 and come out with 6 points from 6 augurs well, I suppose, for the rest of the season. So fair play to them. I think from an Airdrie perspective, so much of the chat going into this game, certainly at the tail end of the week, was about Danny Lennon taking over, and rightly so. We messaged him. We messaged him. We discussed him on the podcast last week. But I think after the game, if I was an Airdrie fan, I would be more concerned with probably the standard of the squad rather than Danny Lennon. Like, it feels like Rhys McCabe or Rhys McCabe and whoever else was in charge of recruitment at Airdrie has essentially left them with a squad of players that is broadly similar to how they started last season. And last season, they were the worst team in the division, certainly between July and December, and they were able to kind of bring in additions in January, which helped matters. But ultimately, if it hadn't been for Hamilton's points deduction, they would have finished bottom. And that's kind of the kind of stench you're getting off this Airdrie squad at this moment in time.
I think there's a lot in there, Shaughan, so we'll look at both teams one after the other. We'll start with Arbroath, because I completely agree with you. I think you would be delighted if you're an Arbroath fan at the start of the season. You were absolutely spot on there. They have looked good in every game they've played in, even against St Johnstone. And I know that it's probably, there's two teams with very different aspirations going into that match. One who's looking to win the division, the other team just looking to stay in it. They gave a decent account of themselves, and I think St Johnstone ultimately had to work quite hard to break them down and to score the 3 goals. And I think that what we're seeing from this Arbroath team is probably quite similar to the Dick Campbell team that won promotion into the division back in, I think it was 2019 when they came up, where at the very worst you will get from an Arbroath team is bags and bags of enthusiasm and hard graft. But there's quality. I think when you look at all the constituent parts of this Arbroath team, there's quality, and there's something, you can say something positive about every player and something they'll bring to add to the general effort. But there's a real collective there. And I think that previously Arbroath had lost their way under Campbell. I think it was perhaps the signing, and I don't know what you think, but the signing that suggested that maybe Campbell's trying to do something, or he's trying to second guess himself, was when they brought Scott Allen in. And that's not to be dismissive of Scott Allen as a player, because Scott Allen is a smash, or certainly was a smashing player. Just never felt right for what Arbroath are looking to do. Felt like a luxury player that if you had all the constituent parts now, you could maybe accommodate someone like Scott Allen. I never thought that Arbroath were able to do that. And then Dick Campbell really did go down that rabbit hole of trying to replicate Joel Newbley in the aggregate by signing 5 players from the 11th tier of English football in the hope that one of them would come good, and ultimately that didn't happen. But since Gold and Hamilton have come in, they really seem like they've gone back to basics with that, and it's just built on hard work and graft with that quality in there. And the fact that you've gone away to Queen's Park, won quite comfortably, wee bit sticky at the end when Josh Fowler went ahead, and I think it was a Pignatello had a good chance to pull one back. It could have been a wee bit tricky at the end, but then you come to this game and not a fantastic game of football, but you ultimately win. And then, in fact, even going back to the first game of the season on the television against Ayr United, remember when Ayr United scored after, was it 15 minutes or so? Mm-hmm. You were thinking, this could be a bit of a long evening for them. But they settled into the game really well, and I think a draw was perhaps the fairest result. So I think what we're seeing from David Gold and Colin Hamilton and the players so far this season is players that are working really, really hard to make this Arbroath side as difficult to beat as possible and getting the rewards from it. 7 points from a possible 12 and something you can see positive in their performance. I'd be very pleased with this.
Yeah, totally. And I think maybe somebody like Gavin Riley, for example, is a good example of what Arbroath do really well. So I don't think he's the best player in that Arbroath team by a mile. However, in terms of just, I suppose, being an attacker who is quite happy to almost be the first line of defence, if that makes sense.
A defensive forward. Forward.
He will close down everything. And even when he had to go off, like they had to make a couple of substitutions. So Callan had to go off. Riley came off. I suppose what is encouraging though, when they brought substitutes on, if anything, it maybe even made them better. Like in terms of like Todorov coming on again, I think he is happy to do something similar to what Riley would do. Maybe not quite as mobile, but certainly very, very hard working, and maybe more of a goal threat, I suppose, as you saw in terms of the fact that he managed to score that goal. But I think for a long time, Arbroath were far and away the best part-time team in the country, and I'm not saying that necessarily wasn't the case, but I don't know, something wasn't quite clicking. But now I think you look at that squad, I think you compare it to Airdrie, for example, or maybe even Queen's Park, or maybe even other full-time teams in the division, and I think there are players in the Arbroath team that would easily play for several full-time teams in the Championship. I think they have the hard-working team, the best part-time team, but ultimately, as you've already mentioned, just loads of quality in the squad as well.
I think Todorov's an interesting one, because I think anytime we've ever spoken about Nikolai Todorov, we never think of him as like your team's principal striker. You know, he's not the guy that's going to be starting Rook. I think a lot of the time we talk about Nikolai Todorov, we talk to him about he's an option to have. And anytime I'm sure whether it be like at Airdrieonians or Hamilton or Dunfermline or Arbroath, he's an alternative. He's someone that you can bring off the bench to maybe if you need to go long, if you need to noise the defence up a wee bit, you've got a big strong boy there that you can hit balls up to. And he's got 3 goals for the season so far. He was interviewed after the match and he was talking about his role at the team. And I think he was quite quick to say that it is a team game in that regard, and how every player is called upon, and he's quite happy with his role. But I just find him an interesting person to talk about, because I think that we've never seen him as, I think, who'd be an out-and-out number 9. Eamon Brophy, for instance, who we were talking about on last week's show. You know, he is at the moment the undisputed number 1 striker at Greenock Morton. You know, it helps that you got the 2 goals against United. It helps that you scored a fabulous goal against St Johnstone at the weekend. But I don't think we think about Todorov like that. And it'll be interesting to see if at some point over the course of the season that changes. We don't know how long Riley's going to be out for, if it's a serious injury, something that might keep him out for a couple of weeks. But in Todorov, you've got a forward there who I think will be really keen to try and take his chance and prove to Gold and Hamilton what he's capable of from the start. I
think this might be his best chance in terms of being a first choice striker. I was trying to think who would be up against when he was at Airdrie, when they finished 4th in the division. I'm trying to think who else was maybe their strikers that season, but it kind of felt like he was kind of in and out of the team, but maybe he probably started a good few games that season, and maybe that is his weak point. I think he maybe is, again, off the top of my head, I'm the checked, apologies. I think he's best return, maybe about 9. Whether that was with Airdrie, was probably with Inverness. However, the fact he started the season so strongly, and maybe he is, in terms of that Arbroath squad, the best forward that they have. I did enjoy he was asked about the fact that he feel that he managed to essentially occupy, playing up front on his own, did he feel he managed to occupy the Airdrie backline? And he said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he goes, well, I thought I managed to occupy 3 of them, but I certainly didn't want to get anywhere close to the big guy on the right, which I presumed was, I presume it's Shaughan McGuigan. He would have been the kind of biggest defender that Airdrie had. So I thought it was quite funny they didn't want to go anywhere near him. But regardless, I do think he started the season really, really well. And I wouldn't have any issues if I was an Arbroath fan with Todorov starting games and leading the line.
He might not have got close to Shaughan McGuigan. He certainly got close to Lewis Strapp. I thought he should have been sent off for that. The sort of I think it's there's a wee coming together, and when both players get back to their feet, Todorov makes it's a pretty blatant elbow gesture, catches Strapp right across the face. And let's be honest, we've all probably wanted to elbow Lewis Strapp at some point in our lives. But I'm just surprised that it was only a booking, because I don't know what the referee's got a really good view to it. I don't know what suggests that isn't a red card offence and it's just a booking.
I'd read about it before I'd saw it. So when I eventually kind of watched it on I think it was Arbroath highlights, I caught it on. I think I was a wee bit confused with, he does catch him. He absolutely kind of swings an elbow. He's frustrated at the fact that I think Strapp's kind of grappled him and he's essentially, get off me. But the play stopped at that point. So he was essentially swinging an elbow at him, and the referee had seen enough to book him. But if you're elbowing somebody essentially off the ball, I'm not entirely sure how the referee could warrant it a yellow card rather than a red card. So I agree. I thought he was very lucky. Yeah,
the goal was very good, and I think a player to highlight who looked like, you only by the highlights, looked like he'd really good game, Ryan Flynn in the centre of the park. And I think that's the Airdrie would love a kind of player like Ryan Flynn at the moment, who I think since he's moved to Arbroath after leaving St Mirren, I think he was one of Golden Grey, that's the name of David Gold's soccer academy, sorry, Golden Hamilton. He was one of the first signings made, and I think he has just been such a hugely positive presence in that midfield for Arbroath, because just like first and foremost, just a really good football player. He's big and strong, he can put himself about, he's energetic, so he ticks all those boxes that you want from a teammate perspective. But on top of that, loads of quality. There's a couple of times in this game, really driving runs. He gets the secondary assist for this. It's his ball. Really nice pass. Good work from Ryan Dow, actually, in the first instance, to get it into Flynn. But it's a nice pass to Finlay Marshall, who ultimately puts the pass in for Todorov to finish. But I think it's having someone like him in there, where it's just like experience and quality. That's a huge thing. But yeah, it's a really good pass to the build up to the goal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right, in terms of maybe all the kind of best moments that Arbroath had in this game, it felt like Flynn was involved. The other player I thought was maybe deserved being called out was the player that was next to him. Because I've
Harry Cochrane.
Because for a long time, the fact that he's been in League One, the fact that he has probably been quite divisive when it comes to Queen of South fans in terms of whether he warranted a new contract, for example, which wasn't forthcoming at the end of last season. Whether that was to do with budget, whether that was to do with Grinning Pete not necessarily rating him, don't know. However, it feels like he's really taken to Arbroath and Championship like a kind of duck to water, I suppose. So a player I wasn't sure about, but again, somebody who just seems to be embracing Gayfield, I suppose.
I suppose, though, that Harry Cochrane's talent has never really been in doubt. I suppose he's just like the moments in his career where you were expecting him to kick on and expect him to really break through and become that form the fulcrum of the midfield at Hearts. It never really quite happened for him. And I suppose that him dropping down to Queen of the South, I thought that'd be a good move to reinvigorate him. Again, that hasn't quite happened, but the move to Arbroath, that appears to have done that, because as you see here, he does look like he started the season quite positively. I don't necessarily think he's going to be the player you're going to get like a say there's an 8-minute highlights package, you're not really going to see much of Harry Cochrane because a lot of the stuff it's quite unflashy, unfancy. Yeah. But I think you're right. He's really bought into what Golden Hamilton are looking to do there. That just exactly what we described. Really hard working, a lot of graft there, but you've got the quality on the ball to back that up. So by having the pair of them in there, no Callaghan, you're right, had to go off injured there. Like, in fact, you've been able to bring Taylor Stephen in, gives you something a wee bit different on the wings. I think that Arbroath are in a good place, and certainly at the moment, there's no games have ever been won, no league titles have ever been decided, no relegations have ever been decided after just 4 matches, but they just feel like they're in a much better place compared to Airdrieonians, who I think, other than a sort of half chance that fell to Ewan Henderson, didn't really trouble Aidan McAdams in the goal.
Yeah, never really in the game. And it was interesting in terms, like, although Danny Lennon was quite complimentary afterwards, and that's fine. Like, you're not going to throw anybody kind of under the bus after one game. And you would imagine that ultimately he probably had maybe one day on the training pitch with them, if that. So that you would possibly even that Aaron Taylor Sinclair might have picked this team or had a big say in the team. So as much as I didn't think that Danny Lennon necessarily described the highlights that I watched, I suppose, didn't have an issue with the fact that he was reasonably complimentary about side. I did think it was interesting in terms of, it almost feels like, in terms of the style of play, I remember like we would describe Arbroath as being quite agricultural, maybe, or quite dirty at times. Certainly I've seen them, certainly League One when it was between them and Wraith under Dick Campbell. They weren't shy about putting a foot in, which is fine, don't have an issue with that. But it kind of felt like that Arbroath were the team that was kind of good on the ball and playing decent football. And this Airdrie team, which under Rhys McCabe we've always regarded as being quite a good footballing team, it felt like for this one, they were quite direct and they were quite dirty. And although I suppose it kind of buys into this suggestion from Lennon afterwards that they were hard-working and resilient and gave their all, but I suppose I didn't see too much quality, and certainly I didn't see too many chances getting created.
Nah, I just think that going back to the point you made right back at the start when we were introducing this match, I think the big issue is just that Airdrie, they've got a lot of players who want to do the same kind of thing. It's all guys who are just like technically very gifted football players, but might not necessarily have the muscle to go up against the likes of a Ryan Flynn or a Ross Callaghan in the middle of the park. They've signed a striker, finally. Tate Xavier-Jones has come in from Luton Town. Quite liked, he gave an interview prior to the match, described himself as being fast and technical. He likes taking on players and getting shots off in the box. Just think that they need to try and find him, try to find a way to get him into the team. The way he describes himself, it sounds like he could do with a partner up front to do a bit of the heavy lifting for him.
Do you know who they could do with? Nikolai Todorov. Yeah. Like everybody in that team is just kind of small, technical, and listen, eventually that might be enough if Daniel Lennon can get something out of them. But I just think the way they've put that squad together is, I mean, my goodness, I feel they're in a bit of turmoil at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think that too early to judge on what Lennon's doing. You touched on it there. He's only probably had one, maybe 2 training sessions with them. Probably still getting to know the players. Might not even know some of the players just yet. So need to see when he gets his feet under the table, as it were. But I think that they'll probably still be looking to do some business between now and whenever the loan window closes. I think another forward might be a good option. Maybe somebody to play out wide as well. I think Henderson's the only out and out wide player within the team.
He's done okay, but I think maybe all the goals he scored has come for set pieces, which is fine. That's nothing to sneer at. But I'm still not entirely sure that he is the. If you had one good wide player and it was you and Henderson, I still think you probably need a wee bit more.
Yeah, I think, did he not score against Ross County from open play? He scored, one of them was a free kick and the other one was from open play.
You might be right. You might be right.
But is there anything else to be said about Airdrieonians? Are we seeing are there any shoots of hope that we can cling to?
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, in terms of that, well, that's 4 games now, no wins. Feels like very similar to the start of last season. And I just think in terms of, certainly on paper, I think that Arbroath team is a good bit better. So unless A, they can bring bodies in, or B, Danny Lennon can just manage to kind of get something extra out of this squad, I think it might be a long season for them.
Yeah, I suppose going right back to the start of that campaign when they got that 2-each draw with Ross County, you're thinking that's the side of a team that have got a lot of resilience there to be able to take on the favourites to win the league and to dig out a point from such a precarious position. You think that might augur well, but no, it hasn't really panned out. Now, there's no games for either side. Oh no, there is, beg your pardon. Mm-hmm. Ross County are playing Arbroath on Saturday.
As much as I've been very complimentary about Arbroath, and as much as Ross County have been really bad so far this season, it's still difficult to see past Ross County. I probably should talk up Arbroath for this one, but I will go for a home win.
I think it'll be a draw this one. I just don't know. County they just seem quite there's a lack of balance in the team. It's something we've spoken about there, that they've got too many good players to try and fit into the team. I think John Robertson's got a job in his hands to try and find that settled 11. While you compare them to Arbroath, who do have a very settled starting 11, I think that I could see Arbroath giving them a bit of a bloody nose for this. I might not win it, but I could see them digging a result out there. And although it's a free weekend for Airdrieonians, which I think Danny Lennon will be delighted about, gets a chance in to get a good look at the boys. Any other cliches you can think of when it comes to 3 weekends. But they're away to Partick Thistle on Friday the 12th of September.
I was really impressed with Partick Thistle on Saturday. Watched them against Raith Rovers. First half was excellent. Partick Thistle were good, Raith Rovers were good, and then the second half, probably a less exciting 45 minutes, I suppose, but certainly Partick Thistle were on the front foot and deserved to win the game. So I will go for a Partick Thistle win in that one.
That's good. I'm glad we were able to touch on that match, because earlier in the week I received a message from long-time listener Ewan Mowat, who asked if we'd be covering Partick Thistle's 3-2 win over Raith Rovers as part of our patented 3-game roundup. I said no, we have already selected our featured match from the Championship, but I'm glad we were able to dig a couple of seconds in about that. Is there anything else you want to say about that match to give Ewan a bit of a pop?
Only that I was messaged beforehand to say that there was an article in the programme about it was to do with the birth date of Captain Tom. The charity man who's with the scammy daughter? Yes.
Ah, right, brilliant.
So there'd been for some reason the article was written about the Partick Thistle game that was closest to the birth of Captain Tom, and I believe I was name checked in it. However,
hey.
I got to the game specifically early, asked where they sell programmes. I was told there was a lady with a daughter sold programmes down the street. Went down the street, was told that she'd moved because there'd been some bother between two sets of fans. Walked round to the home end because that's where I was told to go. She wasn't there. Was told I could get them inside the stadium. Went inside the stadium, didn't get them. So I have no doubt that the article about the birth of Captain Tom and the closest Partick Thistle game to that date was very good, but I've yet to read it.
I think you might have dodged a bullet though. Was it not a Partick Thistle? Was it not the Partick Thistle programme where a supporter, a long-time Partick Thistle supporter, had passed away and they'd written an obituary for him in the programme, and it was like, my goodness, this isn't the most complimentary of obituaries you're ever likely to read.
I think it was written by a different person. I'm sure it was fine.
Person. Let's hope so, because if it was the same person, Shaughan, your name would be getting absolutely dragged through the mud. Right, we will drop into League One and we'll discuss the least interesting matches ever likely to feature on the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. It's Hamilton Academical 0, Cove Rangers 0. Now, this match was broadcast live on BBC Alba at 5:30. After leaving Oco View, I was looking through the scores and there was none that really stood out in League One, certainly involving teams that we hadn't really talked about. So I said, listen, we picked the two games. We picked the game from the Championship, which had an interesting storyline to it. We picked a high-scoring game from League Two, which there's loads to talk about from it. And then we said, well, there's not much on the go, so let's look at this one. And my goodness, have we made a mistake? I still refuse to believe a single worthwhile minute of SPFL football has ever been broadcast on that channel, but it is another chance to discuss two wayward football clubs. 0-0, about 3 chances in the entire match. Hamilton are in 5th place with 7 points. Cove Rangers bottom the table with just 2 points. Shaughan, is there anything at all that you want to say about Hamilton Accies 0, Cove Rangers 0?
It's funny, when I saw this was on the tail, I thought, this might be a good game. This might actually be okay. And then, like, when we said that we would potentially talk about it, when I was coming back up the road on Saturday, I was like, right, must get up the road. It's Hamilton versus Cove Rangers, and we're going to discuss it. So I kind of got in, watched it for maybe half an hour. I was like, this is really bad. I'll make dinner, and then I'll just watch highlights because we're going to talk about it. There's no highlights. So what I've done today is I watched the game on iPlayer, but I watched it speeded up. I've been in a couple of meetings. But I had my camera switched off so I could watch Hamilton versus Cove Rangers in the background. It was absolutely stinking. It was so bad. There was like maybe 2 decent chances for Cove, no chances whatsoever for Hamilton. My goodness, a really stinking game of football.
Have you ever seen The Shining, right?
Yes.
You know the bit where Jack Torrance is first descending into madness and there's a sort of close-up shot where he's just like this? Now that's horrendous audio, but if you've seen The Shining and know the bit I'm talking about, that's how I felt watching this game of football. I was like, my goodness, please something interesting happen. And so, similar to yourself, Shaughan, I watched this, but I went back earlier today during my lunch break. Basically, I went in BBC iPlayer. I just fast forwarded to half time, then watched the sort of the key bits they've picked out, and then fast forwarded to the end of the match, and then picked out the key bits again. But oh dear, it was a dismal game of football. I think that the chances, and there's nothing interesting to talk about this game. So we've made a mistake in doing it. There's plenty of interesting stuff to talk about the teams. Nothing interesting to talk about in this match. I mean, I think the chances, we've got them written down.
I think Mikey Milnes had a chance and Leighton Bisland had a chance. Mikey Milnes, I can't remember what happened. He certainly had a shot from...
It's a good ball over to him, and he
yes.
thinks he tries to take the thing on his left foot and basically just kind of passes into it's quite a firm pass into the goalkeeper's hands. Yeah. Leighton Bisland should have scored. Actually, a really good ball in, a header to the back post. He should have scored. But that's what I think. Closest Hamilton had, it was a Kyle McDonald header. And they went miles over the bar.
Yep. And the fact that I think they actually featured that chance at half time. That's how bad the first half was.
That's why I picked that one out. I mean, I felt really, really sorry for, I don't know the name of the presenter, he was quite good, but I felt sorry for him and Stephen Craigan trying to talk about a match. I mean, it's easy enough for you and I to be really snide after the fact and say, Christ, that was shit. But they actually have to make it quite interesting and to try and talk up the chances. And I think that it's incredible that Stephen Craigan was able to say so much without saying nothing at all when he's describing this game, because it was so bad. And on top of that as well, I think there was a crowd of about 250 people there for it. And I know that perhaps this game, more than anyone, it's perhaps like the least appealing, the fact that it's at Broadwood. Hamilton, there's fans boycotting the club at the moment for the way it's been run. Cove Rangers fans, they don't tend to bring big numbers there. The fact that it was at 5:30, the fact that the game was already being covered on television, I think all these things affected the attendance, but quite a ghostly feeling to it. Just, there was no real incidents of happening. There was no atmosphere there at all. I think it's just something that happened on Saturday afternoon.
Do you know something that it's kind of connected, but I don't know if you saw John Rankin's interview. It was actually after the Edinburgh game.
Yes, of course,
for the Challenge Cup.
Just to put that into context, basically through midweek on Wednesday, Hamilton were taking on Edinburgh in the Challenge Cup at Broadwood. Hamilton, it was announced that they had to remove some players from the starting lineup because they hadn't been registered properly, including a young boy, can't remember his name, but a young boy who's like 15 or 16 years old, had been told that he'd be starting. All his family, they're really excited to see it. And then the manager had to remove him from half time. So effectively, it's an 8-minute interview of John Rankin explaining what the situation is at the club at the moment.
Yeah, totally. And I think in terms of Rankin, it was quite honest, but I suppose like quite interesting in terms of what he is having to put up with at this moment in time. And I'm not saying it's not Hamilton's fault. Like, and Rankin wasn't necessarily laying the blame at anybody else's door. I think Rankin was saying, I don't really know why these two players couldn't play, but it was an interesting kind of peek behind the curtain in terms of what Hamilton are kind of having to put up with at this moment in time. The fact that they had maybe 3 subs on the bench, kind of outfield subs potentially. I think Cove had 1. It's just 2 clubs who do not have their kind of worries to seek. Paul Hartley seemed reasonably upbeat afterwards in terms of he felt that they defended quite well. He was complimentary about the fact that Mitch Megginson had to play a good bit deeper rather than playing up front. But certainly in terms of Hamilton, they've got 7 points from the opening 4 games. Like we knew they had off-field problems, but I suppose what is now becoming an even bigger issue is that it feels like they have on-field issues as well.
Sticking with the off-field issues for the time being, like last week, there was the club was the subject of a winding up order, very similar to what triggered Edinburgh City's points deduction a couple of weeks ago, but not quite as severe. So it won't be a liquidation event for the moment. But later in that day, the club, Jock Brown, the chairman, posted a statement on the club website, included this paragraph: I am aware of no contractual relationship with the company involved and have no knowledge of any previous communications from that company. In these circumstances, it appears as though the wrong party is being pursued. Now, if that was any other club in Scotland, you'd say, wow, that's I really hope they can extricate themselves from that. Sounds horrendous. But Hamilton Academical, the club that lost £1 million to Nigerian scammer. Now, I appreciate that wasn't Jock Brown's fault, but it's just another example of how haphazardly the club is being run at the moment, and it's just exasperating. They had a good VT at halftime. I think that's something that BBC Alba do very well. Is the wee halftime videos. Sometimes they're not necessarily relevant to either of the teams that are playing, but this was good. John Rankin, Brendan Coghill, who, if anyone knows him from Patreon, he features alongside with Craig Fowler when Craig Fowler's doing a special segment on the travails of Hamilton Academical, and somebody who was talking about the Supporters Association. And it's just exasperating if you think of all the bad things that have happened to that club over the past 5 months. Those are the things that kind of happen to most clubs in the space of like 3 decades. There can't be many clubs that have gone through so many degrees of misfortune in such a short space of time. And it must have an impact on the players. It must have an impact on the players. I mean, that's, if you want to include the Challenge Cup there, that's no wins in 5. You know, they've drawn with Motherwell's B team, lost to Edinburgh City, and Edinburgh City are a good side, but you're Hamilton Academical, you're a full-time team. You should have the wherewithal to put away Edinburgh City. And I know they made a good start to the competition with the wins over Montrose and a really, really impressive win over Queen of the South. I just wonder that negativity, that degree of uncertainty, that has to have an impact on you. I know John Rankin there, who probably deserves more credit than he gets for holding the club together, that it must be so difficult not to let that seep into the players, the uncertainty. The players are probably discussing, well, if all this is happening, how's this going to affect our wages? You know, all these must be factors, and it just must be such a toxic's not the right word, but just such a downcast environment to try and play football, to try and be the very best version you can be and go out there on a Saturday afternoon and play football.
No, you're right. You absolutely must kind of permeate into the dressing room, and you're right. I suppose ultimately, first thing is, are we going to get our wages paid whenever that is? And it's funny. In terms of the winding up order, the weird thing about Hamilton is, so that I think the sheriff has to okay it, and then at that point it becomes a kind of winding up scenario. But you kind of wonder. I think it was a suggestion that the kind of debt was against the stadium rather than the club, because I think it was I think it was an energy bill.
Okay.
So I think Hamilton's argument might be, well, we don't play at Hamilton anymore, and maybe you need to speak to Colin McGuigan about that. But again, without knowing 100% about it, and we never know 100% when it comes to Hamilton. I do think there's an argument there about that's not our day. It's the stadiums and Colin McGowan's. I don't know, but regardless, it's such a mess that you're absolutely right. It will have an effect on the players, and I think you're seeing it right now, because they have, as much as it is the shallowest squad in Scottish football, still a really good starting 11, and they haven't got the results I expected them to. But then that's not a surprise, considering how much of a mess the off the field situation is.
I like how you say they've got the shallowest squad in Scotland, when Cove Rangers had one goalkeeper and one outfield player on the bench. I think it's also, just to point out there, about the SPFL are investigating Hamilton's use of amateur players as well. They've not been registered properly, or there's some dubiety as to whether or not they might be getting paid. A bit of street talk about that.
I think the situation is, as long as so let's say they have a job in a warehouse, for example, as long as they are working in the warehouse and getting a wage for that, then that's fine. I don't know how Hamilton are putting it through the books. I suppose we'll find out.
Well, I suppose we'll find out when they're given a 25-point deduction in a couple of weeks' time. And we mentioned there about the depth of Cove Rangers squad. I think that when the graphic was posted, it must be about 4:30 in the afternoon, when the graphic was posted on social media outlining their team, the starting 11, which was a very odds and sods bag of experienced players and youngsters coming in to make up the numbers, and Ballant Demas and Cole Donaldson on the bench. I think a lot of people were thinking, fucking hell, that must be the shallowest bench we've seen in the SPFL for some time. I can't even remember the last time a team would have just the two players on the bench. But I even prompted the club to put a subsequent tweet out explaining what the situation is, and it said, and I quote, "With Blair Eel suspended and Fraser Five out long term, we were hit this week with injuries to Declan Glass, Aaron Darge and Milos Achamsky, severely restricting the manager's options for today's game and leaving us with just one outfield substitute. Fans should be reassured that the club is working hard every day to bring in players who will supplement the quality we have in the squad. We would hope to be able to issue an update in the coming days." And now, that was on Saturday afternoon. We're recording this on Tuesday evening, and as we speak, there have been no reinforcements at Balmoral Park. Hartley's said he's looking to get in 3 or 4 players before they play Inverness, Caledonian Thistle. That's in mid-September. But, I mean, John Rankin doesn't have his troubles to seek. Neither does Paul Hartley. When that must be incredibly frustrating to put this together. And sorry to keep on talking here, but I think that the Cove Rangers players deserve a lot of credit for just digging in and getting the result. On another day they could have won this match, but to come away with that where there's 90 minutes in horrible conditions as well, wasn't a nice day on Saturday. Fair play to them.
No, you're right. There was a kind of togetherness and unity, and a decent performance. So probably maybe the better team on the day. Certainly created I was going to say better chances. The 2 chances that were created by Cove Rangers. You're right. Paul Hartley seemed reasonably positive about it. He said he would bring in 3 or 4 players by the next league game. So fair play. In terms of the last time anybody fielded a smaller bench, remember Ian Murray's first season at Raith, and they finished, I think, 7th. Cove Rangers were in the championship that season. Raith went to Morton on the last day of the season, and they only had 1 sub.
Oh, right.
However, bear in mind, because it was the last day of the season, there was nothing to play for whatsoever. So I think players that they didn't have to risk, they just didn't put on the bench. But this is a key game. They're in they were bottom of the league. That's all they have. So yes, as much as Raith have listed 1 sub, I do think Cove are probably in a more difficult position. But it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like in terms of Cove, in terms of being a full-time club, it just feels like it's, I don't know how to describe it, maybe running out of steam. I don't know how else to describe it.
I think so. I said that earlier about Paul Hartley. Maybe because Paul Hartley's quite an easy person quite an easy manager to make fun of. You know, I think that early promise that he showed at Alloa and then the move to Dundee, and Dundee, I think on the whole was a qualified success. I think it was the move to Falkirk that really soured him as a managerial prospect. And I think that he's still trying to rebuild his reputation. Mm-hmm. And when you see like Cove Rangers, a full-time team that are sitting bottom of League One, it'd be easy to think, well, the manager's shit. But I've got to get a big degree of sympathy for him, because how on earth are you expected to put a team out in the park where you've got so many injuries? Your best player is out until December with a long-term injury. There's no other team in that division that could really survive without if a similar injury happened. And so the fact he is able to still get this group of players performing, I think that says a lot to him. And again, it says a lot to the players. I really like Mitch Megginson's interview. Megginson had to play in central midfield for this one, a position where he said he has not played in for a long, long time. But as a football player, he said, if you just keep the basics right and do the simple things, then you can build the game around it. And he was able to do that, and he deserved his Man of the Match award. But I think it'd be easy if the team had a negative feeling around it, or there's like, say, a degree of toxicity in the changing room, or players didn't like each other, there was cliques and factions and all that. It'd be very easy to use the fact that you had one outfield substitute as an excuse. See, they went to Hamilton, or they went to Broadwood, I should say, and lost that match like 3-0. And the players are afterwards saying, we only had one player on the bench. And the fact that they just don't use that as an excuse. Kept talking. Megginson said it about 3 times in the interview, put a shift in. And that's all you have to do. It's just, there's obviously a degree of togetherness at Cove Rangers there for the players to go there and dig out a result. And yes, Hamilton weren't the most perplexing opposition they're likely to come up against this season. But nevertheless, that takes a lot. There's a lot of exertion there. And as Megginson said, his legs will be sore in the morning.
No, totally. I think there's something to admire, but I think we pegged him as maybe like somebody who would challenge for top 4. Rather than somebody who definitely would challenge for top 4. I now see them as a team who might have enough about them to stay away from the bottom 2 places.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I've been thinking about this, and I was talking to my friends about this. I think that when you look at League One, and if you look at the makeup, you say there's 4 full-time sides in division and 6 part-time sides. If you didn't know any better, you would say, well, the top 4 positions are going to be the 4 full-time sides, and then it'll be everyone else to fight out to be the best of the rest. I think that Cally Thistle and Queens will be duking out for the title. That's not changed. I thought that from the beginning. Yeah. But I think 3rd and 4th place are up for grabs. I don't see Cove Rangers or Hamilton Academical having the divine, not a divine right, but just because they're full time and they've got some good players, they will challenge for it. Cove look woefully short for the season ahead, and that's even before they had these injuries. Hamilton, we've said it every time we talk about them, it feels like something unpleasant is coming down the track from them. It's going to massively handicap them. 3rd and 4th place are up for grabs. If you're Alloa, who've had a right good start to the season, they lost at the weekend there to Cally Thistle, and Stefan Skugel went off injured, so hopefully that's not a long-term thing, because Skugel just makes Alloa better, makes everyone around them better. If you're Alloa, though, and you're Stennismuir, maybe even East Fife at the moment, given how they've come into the season with 7 points from a potential 9 from the last 3 games, you'd be looking at 3rd and 4th place and you think, well, why not? Why not? So the travails of those 2 full-time teams, I think it's made League One. I mean, League One was always quite an interesting division. It's made it more interesting for the promotion aspect, and I think it's made it more interesting from a relegation aspect. I don't think there were any outstanding teams that you could look at and be like, they're the ones that's definitely going to get relegated. I think when we were doing the terrace predictions, I think I put Hamilton to finish in bottom place. And people, when the graphic went out, I saw people replying saying, how on earth are Hamilton going to finish bottom when you look at the team that they've got? I says, aye, but we're just sort of putting on our Nostradamus hat on and taking a wee look into the future there and thinking something bad is going to happen to this team.
Wait until they get that 45-point deduction.
Just you wait until this company that Jock Brown has never heard of come calling for their money back. Now, both teams, Shaughan, are up for some Challenge Cup action at the weekend. East Kilbride versus Hamilton Academical, Elgin City versus Cove Rangers. But the big stuff starts on the Saturday, the 13th of September. That's when we're back in league business. Peterhead versus Hamilton.
Peterhead have struggled recently. Play quite well, but not getting the results. I think Peterhead will actually win that one.
Cove Rangers versus Inverness Caledonian Thistle. And bear in mind, Hartley expects to have a fuller complement of players to pick from.
That aside, it's difficult to see beyond an Inverness victory.
And just before we finish up League One, on last week's show, for our bonus content on the division, we spoke about Stennismuir defender Nicky Jamieson and said it was brilliant to see him back in action after scoring against Annan Athletic in the Challenge Cup and coming through 90 minutes. It looks like he's injured himself again. He came on as an 83rd minute substitute in the side's 1-1 draw with East Fife on Saturday and went down. Straight away you knew it was a serious injury because he was absolutely bereft, and he was able to walk off the pitch, which I suppose is something, but his shirt pulled over his face. He was in tears. The fans were chanting his name as he went off the pitch. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. It seems quite serious though, and it's just shit because he's a great player, and to have the mental fortitude to come back from such a serious injury, to have another setback. I hope he's all right and hope he's in the right headspace. I hope he's doing okay.
Yeah, agreed, because we mentioned the fact that it was so important to have him back. It was great to have him back, but hopefully it's not as bad an injury as it was last time.
Yeah, felt like a defeat. I mean, it was bad enough to concede an 89th minute equaliser, but then while that's happening at the same time, it was just a double whammy. Not a nice way to wrap up that game on Saturday afternoon. But our final featured match in this podcast took place at K Park in League 2, where East Kilbride demolished Forfar Athletic, running out comfortable 5-0 winners. Cammy Elliott was the hero with 4 goals, and Nathan Flanagan capped the rout with a 5th late on. And incredibly, East Kilbride managed to come through this contest without getting anyone sent off. So that's a bonus. They are top of the division now with 12 points. Forfar are in 4th place with 7 points. And Shaughan, I'd like to pick your brains on this one.
I wondered going into it if John Robertson's suspension for East Kilbride would maybe give Forfar a better chance of getting something out of the game. Turned out it gave them less chance of getting anything out of the game, as Cam Elliott managed to get 4 goals. It was just a disastrous day.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of Mark McCallum and in terms of Stuart Morrison, between them, they might have been at fault for maybe the first 3 goals, maybe.
I think this, and it's a player that I like as well, and I think he's been a smashing player for Forfar, and I think this was just an off day for him.
Yep.
I think this was a ruinous performance from Stuart Morrison.
Yeah.
Just think for the first 3 goals, I was surprised. I thought he'd actually get hooked at half time because it was such a devastating performance. All 3 goals, as you say, were he was directly responsible, certainly for 2 of them, and very culpable for the 3rd one, and it's really not like him. And McCallum as well, who's been such a dependable goalkeeper, for him to get involved in the nonsense as well. Just Jim Weir must have been tearing his hair out watching that. You're 2 of your most dependable, most experienced, I'm going to presume well-paid players, the guys that you're counting on every week, for them to get involved in those kind of shenanigans certainly didn't help matters. But I think it's important to say that, and this is something I thought by looking at the result, something that I thought by watching the highlights, and then subsequently I had it confirmed in a watch his post-match interview. But as Mick Kennedy was saying, that he feels as though that East Kilbride are really they're adapting well to the demands of the division. And I think in the previous games, they lost the first game of that season going down 3-1 to the Spartans, but since then, they've won 4 games. There's been a degree of jeopardy in them, narrow wins, maybe the game's finished a bit uncomfortably for them. This one was just really, really straightforward. I think Forfar had chances to score at good times, like at 0-0 or 1-0, but they didn't take advantage of them, and East Kilbride absolutely punished them and ran out very, very comfortable winners here. So yeah, great day for them, and just a disastrous day for Forfar.
I'd read a couple of comments that East Kilbride were clinical. So from that, I thought, oh well, maybe they didn't create too many chances, and I'd read that Forfar had defensively been really poor. But actually, they could have won. Like, it could have been 6, it could have been 7, it could have been 8, and I think that kind of midfield of Jack Leach and Lewis Spence and Jal Baldy is probably like nobody else in that division can get close to it. And I know Spartans beat them 3-1, as you mentioned on an opening day of the season. But I suppose this is the type of result and ultimately performance I think we expected from East Kilbride at the start of the season. It's quite maybe a kind of shot across the bows of everybody else in the division, I suppose.
I'd agree with you to an extent there. However, it has to be quantified with the first, particularly the first and second goals. Now, if you listen to last week's show and us discussing the mistake at the back from the Annan Dumbarton game, when Max Kilsby and Zach Balfour just didn't communicate with one another, this is effectively like a carbon copy of this. It's a punt down the park. It's a punt down the park, and I think it's Morrison just misjudges the weight of his header, or he doesn't know where McCallum is, misjudges the weight of his header back to it. Brilliant anticipation from Elliott just to nip in and get a toe on it to score, but just terrible from Morrison and McCallum's perspective. The second goal's and the second goal's similar as well. It just seems like it's again another punt up the park. Morrison and Elliott are tussling for the ball. I don't know what McCallum's doing, comes out and just doesn't get it at all. And then Elliott just sort of gets a toe on it to poke it towards goal. And then him and Morrison they're kind of wrestling with each other, but they're not wrestling with each other. And then he just thumps it. Morrison gives up, thumps it into, and Elliott thumps it into the net. And these Kilbride players celebrating. You can hear someone, I think it's on the Forfar bench, saying, Lino! 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 Obviously looking for a foul, but I think Morrison's reaction's the key one there, because he just sort of kind of looks off into the distance after the goal there.
I thought the first one was quite funny because it started off with a Forfar throw, and it was Lewis Martin. It looked like he was attempting to get some kind of purchase on his throw, but it was like because the ball was wet, it didn't go quite as far as it didn't come out of his hands cleanly, and so it was able to be kind of leathered. I went to an East, I don't know who done it, but it went to an East Kilbride player. And it certainly didn't go to where Lewis Martin wanted it to go, leathered forward. And you're right, a kind of dainty header back from Stuart Morrison that wasn't robust enough, and Elliott was able to kind of nip in. But you're right, the second one was similar but weird. As in, Morrison is attempting to shepherd the ball back, but then Mark McCallum comes running out, but he kind of comes flying out at an angle and goes past both Morrison and Elliott, and then Morrison kind of pirouettes. I don't know how else to describe it. He pirouettes, and at that point, Elliott essentially puts it into the empty net. And like we know, East Kilbride are, broadly speaking, far better than anybody else in the division. But I do think there are teams that could give them a game. And I kind of thought Forfar could do that. But you absolutely cannot defend in that manner and try and give them a game.
And the third goal as well was bad. I mean, initially, it looks like, this is East Kilbride at their best. It's the ball's just, it's all just nice 1-2 touch passing. And eventually the ball's worked out to Nathan Flanagan on the flank. Chucks the ball into the box, and Elliott seems to just head it up in the air rather than, I don't know if he's trying to flick on, but anyway, he heads it up in the air, brings it back down and controls it with a nice touch. Morrison goes to try and meet him, and then Elliott just skips past him.
Yeah.
Like he's like he's incidental, like, oh, excuse me, and then he shoots it, and I'm not sure if the ball takes a deflection on the way in. It's hard to tell from the highlights, but the way that McCallum sort of lies down, it looks like he's going one way, but the ball goes another way.
I wanted to think it was deflected because of the way that McCallum dives, because Elliott doesn't catch it cleanly at all. He absolutely scuffs it. And I think if McCallum stands still, he probably just bends down and picks it up. I mean, it's pure defending from Morrison. Again, as we've kind of explained in terms of the first three goals, skips past them far too easy. I would presume if you see it from a different angle, it would take a deflection. But certainly from the one angle that you see it, it just feels like, again, poor goalkeeping from Mark McCallum.
I know they've got a story of the match, East Kilbride. I didn't watch it, but that might be something to investigate where they've got a videographer down by the side of the pitch. What I did like though was Elliott's celebration. He does a knee slide, but he does it in the corner of the ground where there's no supporters. Surely if you're going to do a knee slide, the East Kilbride fans are the other side. Go and knee slide in front of them. They'd love that. Just a corner flag there.
I suppose you just get excited. You just do what comes naturally.
I tell you what, it did come naturally. That fourth goal. I mean, we're picking holes in the first and second and third goals there. The fourth goal is just a stunner. Fourth goal is just an absolute stunner. Again, really well worked. Jack Healy galloping down the left. Plays a slide rule pass. I think that's what they call it in the business. A slide rule pass to Ellie, who's about 30 yards from goal. Takes a touch. You can maybe say that the Forfar could have been a bit out quicker, Tim, but you can't fault the accuracy and the power of that shot. That's unerring. Mark McCallum had absolutely no chance saving that right into the top corner. And then it's capped with Nathan Flanagan from a corner kick. Has a shot that's saved, but then heads in the rebound. 5-0.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder if... I mean, John Robertson has had a huge amount of plaudits this season. I think he's quite a money player. I would imagine he was quite difficult to put up with, and I do wonder if he obviously he was suspended for this one. I do wonder if he walks back into this starting 11, because this was arguably East Kilbride's best performance of the season to date. Potentially,
so. Yeah,
maybe. But I was even going to. I was going to say another one at Starks Park, but to be fair,
that could have easily been a Race Rovers win.
Could have easily been a Race Rovers win, whereas this could have been 6, 7, 8 against a reasonably decent League Two side. So I fair play to them. I
think you're right in the moment in terms of where Robertson fits into the team, because Jack Healy's playing well. Nathan Flanagan's, that you could maybe say this is probably the best spell of Flanagan's career. You know, he really seems to have blossomed into he was always quite a good winger, but quite inconsistent. But he seems to be doing it on a consistent basis here, just in terms of like goals, assists, and whatnot. It was good to see him scoring at the end there. And you've got a guy that's just scored 4 goals. So so you can't, if you're I think if you're Mick Kennedy, it's a good problem to have, where you don't have any other striker. I think he said that in his post-match interview, given that Uzi C is out for the foreseeable future and Robertson suspended. So maybe that's an issue they'll look to address, just to beef up the numbers, bring another forward. I suppose they've got Dean Cleland in there actually as well. So I think they're probably well stocked in terms of forward options. But if they want a sure thing, that might be something they want to address. But yeah, it's a good problem to have, where your best player, you don't necessarily need to bring him back into the fold. But just I can only imagine how money is if he isn't getting a game though, to be fair. So maybe you do play him. When I went to the game where they played Inverness Caledonian Thistle, he didn't get a pass. He'd made a run and he was looking for a pass from Magnus Mackenzie. Mackenzie was playing it right back in this occasion. He was looking for a ball over the top that didn't come. I think Mackenzie chose to take a touch and play it infield, and he was going off his head at him. And then there was another breaking play, and he's turning around and still like yelling at the young guy, and it's like, right, you didn't get the ball in. It's just calm down a wee bit, man. It's calm down. It's just a pass. But I suppose that what we've seen from East Kilbride, I mean, that's 5 consecutive, or even 6 consecutive wins in all competitions. So they're doing now what I think a lot of people were expected from them. As we said, there's been some sticky moments in some of the games, but this is just all just a match that pretty much went entirely in their favour.
Yeah, they've hit the top spot now, and I don't anticipate anybody overtaking them based on this performance. I mean, it was very, very good.
I think there's perhaps, we mentioned there about Forfar Athletic having chances and not necessarily taking them, but there was a moment, I'd again get your thoughts on this. Was at 1-0. I'm not sure if Kieran Ingles could have had a penalty. There's a moment where I think it's Jack Leach tries this. It's an ambitious crossfield pass that doesn't come off. Ingles nips in. He's trying to get a shot off, but I think it's Jamie Hamilton sort of a bit clumsy in trying to prevent it.
I think you're right. I think it could have been a penalty. yes, it could have changed how the game panned out, but ultimately how kind of dominant East Kilbride were, I don't think it changed anything at all.
Yeah, I think it just shows that that's something that East Kilbride, though, they're getting better at it, but they've still got that propensity of playing themselves into trouble. That was Jack Leach trying to play a crossfield pass 40 yards from his own goal and it getting picked off, and the team straight away are on the back foot. And I don't know, I thought that if Ingles hadn't shot and basically had just gone down, I think he might have been given the penalty. But it's immaterial. It's immaterial there. I think we said it was a difficult afternoon for Forfar defensively, but I think it was a difficult afternoon for them in front of goal as well. I mean, that's now back-to-back defeats against the Spartans and East Kilbride. Now, two of the best sides in the division, so it's not the end of the world. They're probably going to challenge for the title. I don't think Forfar at that stage yet, but that's 3 of the 5 games they haven't scored in. And I think that had been a long-standing issue for Forfar, particularly last season. I think that next to Dunfermline, they were the lowest scorers in the SPFL. And I'm not sure that those areas have been addressed, not just up front, but actually creating chances and being able to service the guys like Martin Rennie and Ingles.
I agree with you to an extent. I suppose it probably isn't the best game to gauge it because you're playing probably the best team in the league. I think what is going to be an issue going forward is that maybe 2 of their more
of course, I should
expressive players are now injured. So
should have mentioned that right at the start. I'm sorry, man. Should have mentioned that.
Is that a broken ankle or a broken leg?
It's Craig Slater went off with a head knock, which thankfully I think he's got a bruising and a big cut, but it's not concussion, which is good. It's Ross McLean.
Ross McLean.
Yeah. So that's shite as well. I hope he's all right, because a broken ankle, you're going to be out for 4 or 5 months. And I think he scored twice against Stirling Albion. They were really good in that match where they beat them 4-2. But that's given Jim Weir another headache, that a guy who's really come on to a game, again, going through a bit of a flourish at the moment in McLean, he's not going to be available for months. So it's just, that's another setback.
Yeah. And it's not like we ran through, or you ran through a number of players there who could be in a forward position for East Kilbride. Forfar don't have that. Forfar don't have a kind of wealth of creative options. So I don't know. I don't know how Weir deals with that. And I do think it will have I thought they'd do okay this season, as in won't necessarily get embroiled at the bottom. Might have a kind of outside chance of the playoffs. I think this very much impacts this, I suppose.
I think so, but it's on another day. You give Stuart Morrison and Mark McCallum, don't make those mistakes.
Yeah.
The first and second goals never ever make it to the highlights, because that's a punt up the park where the defender heads it back to the goalkeeper. That's a punt up the park where Elliott's held off and McCallum comes out and just thumps the ball out for a throw, and they don't make the highlights. But you're 2 down, you've basically given away the first 2 goals. So it's one of those ones you don't stand much of a chance if you're doing that. That won't happen again. Those 2 players, they're far too good players to be making those kind of mistakes. So won't happen again. One of the things I did like, I'm quite enjoying the young commentator who is on East Kilbride. I think that definitely he's getting better as the season goes on. I'm sure he's not listening. But one perhaps slight criticism is that he keeps on referring to players as the former. Such as, I think he mentioned that Nathan Flanagan played for Forfar about 3 times in the highlights. However, just to listen to him, the knowledge that he's got, and it sounds like he's enjoying himself as well, which is great. I think he must only be about 13 or 14, maybe even younger than that. You're obviously going to get better. And what a place to develop your game and build in the future. You get to do the commentary at that age for an SPFL club.
Was he not the kind of co-commentator to start with? Maybe in the League Cup, but it feels like he's now the main commentator. I think it's very good.
I did see one of the comments on YouTube saying that is some pretty impressive commentating. You'd clearly taken the time to learn who was who in the away team beforehand. Well done. It's a bare minimum, really. That's the bare minimum. It doesn't matter how old you are. I'm not giving you credit for that, but it's good. That's something that's quite good about this as well. It's good to see a young person that's that's going to develop and going to get better and be better by the end of the season, better into the future, and that just benefits East Kilbride. And on top of that as well, sticking with the highlights, it's good to see that East Kilbride have moved away from those sort of like vlogger clickbait style thumbnails that they had on YouTube.
Yes.
And it's just a lot classier. It looks a lot more appropriate for match highlights, and I think that's again something that East Kilbride tend to do very well. Quite like the sort of the gold and purple colours as well. Quite lend themselves well to that those sort of a sort of classy package overall.
Again, something fair play, because that lasted maybe, was it all of the League Cup section where there was that weird, as you say, kind of clickbait, almost kind of teenage vlog way to try and get you to watch highlights. But they did get poor feedback about it, and then by the time the league began, they kind of dispensed with it. So fair play to them.
I definitely saw it's a lot better. And quite right, there is a fair degree of positivity around the club at the moment, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. So fair play to them. There's the Challenge Cup action. We mentioned East Kilbride are playing Hamilton Accies, and Forfar Athletic are taking on Dundee's under 20. So that's kind of two localish derbies there. But the big stuff, Shaughan, the biggest game that's taken place in the SPFL so far this season, Saturday the 13th of September, Edinburgh City versus East Kilbride.
Oh, I read that the two managers really get on, which I found quite interesting. They're both in form. I will go for a high scoring draw.
I hope Edinburgh wins so much. I think I'm going to go to this one. I was looking Stenner away at Kelty, but I think I might go to this one instead. It's just that at the start of the season, it's the fixture that picked out as in the entire SPFL as the most interesting one. The haves versus the have-nots, the great dreamers versus the abundance. I think it's going to be a really, really exciting game, and I'd say again, fair play to Edinburgh City, because they've chipped it down to, is it 5 points, minus 5 points?
Yep.
If you're Elgin or Stranraer or Clyde, you're worried, because as Mackindoe was correct, the other teams were coming to hunt you, and they are hunting them down one by one. It's like Goldberg and the WCW. Like, who's next?
See the videos that they put each week of them just like celebrating. And, brilliant!
Yeah.
I think it's class.
That is great, man. And the other game, Forfar Athletic versus Dumbarton.
Oof! I think Dumbarton are a weird team, a really weird team. I will go for a low-scoring game, and I will say Forfar to sneak it, maybe 1-0. I
think this is an interesting game. You're right. Is how Forfar bounce back from this. I think that's going to be really interesting. But then Dumbarton, I think that whilst they were getting the results, I think the performances had been a wee bit shonky. That's something we mentioned in the last week's show. They weren't amazing against Annan, despite the fact they winning 4-3. And I think against Edinburgh City, they weren't the best. This is when it kind of caught up with them. So how they bounce back from that is important. So there'll be two teams looking for some kind of reaction. So very interesting match. So I think we will leave that for now. That's a decent for a free podcast. That's quite a decent amount of time there.
That's a podcast, isn't it?
That is a podcast. That's what a podcast is. A decent amount of time bigging up lower league Scottish football. And despite the fact we said one of the games that we spoke about was the worst thing to happen in living memory.
But we still discussed it in good detail and kind of broader detail, I suppose. So that was fine.
If I worked for the CIA and I was heading up a black site somewhere, I would take footage of that match and torture people with it. I would lock them in a room with projectors either side, just showing this match over and over and over again.
Keeping their eyes open. What's that film again?
Clockwork Orange.
Yes, Clockwork Orange. A film I've never seen.
Have you never seen Clockwork Orange?
Nah.
Good film. Very, very, quite stylish. Quite stylish.
I'll maybe give it a bash.
As good as the Stanley Kubrick film. So we talked about The Shining earlier. Maybe watch Clockwork Orange. We can discuss that.
I'll watch that, and then I'll watch the Surfer.
Brilliant. There's a real night in there. Shaughan McGuigan, The Surfer, Clockwork Orange. Former Northerly Q ladies. We are away to record an episode for our Patreon listeners. We're going to talk about 5 interesting transfers that have taken place in the lower leagues over the past week or so. I mean, the transfer window is generally a wee bit more fluid in the lower leagues, but nonetheless, we need to make content. So this is a chance to talk about a couple of moves that caught our eye. I say this every week, but the Patreon is superb and you should subscribe to it. For as little as $2 American, you can have access to hours and hours of content, and it is 100% worth your time. If you're not prepared to put your hand in your pocket, and that is fair enough, it is a tough economic climate, Shaughan and I will be back in the very near future to talk about some abysmal football once more. So we've got Scotland playing on Friday night, the Challenge Cup fixtures on Saturday, a lot of action for you to get stuck into, so enjoy your football. But unlike the guy who interviewed Mick Kennedy and you could hear his nostrils sort of like making a wheezing noise as he was speaking, please do so respectfully. Thank you very much. Take care. Goodbye.